manufacturing goods. There's delivery service, there's transporter, but in terms of the comments for tonight, if you could really focus your comments on whether or not you support retail and cultivation. That's, I think, what we're most interested in hearing from you on tonight. So I know, we did get a late start. I was going to say some additional things to you with regard to the act and the requirements of the act in terms of the process. I know that there has been a lot of newspaper articles written about this. You've heard news reports and have gotten some information about the lottery process and the time frames and so on and so forth. So I don't want to get into all of that because, again, we're really here to hear from you. You don't need to listen to me talk about all of that. I do want to give you the one update to give you just a sense of sort of, again, what other municipalities are doing. At this point, there are approximately 35 to 40 municipalities that have passed either zoning regulation or a town ordinance. And just quickly, I want to explain the difference between those two things. So zoning regulations are passed by your zoning authority, your planning and zoning authority, your planning and zoning commission in town. And then town ordinances are passed through the legislative body. And in your town, that's the town council. So there are, again, approximately 35 to 40 municipalities that have passed either an ordinance or zoning regulation to permit cannabis establishment uses. In some towns, they're only permitting cultivation, and others are only permitting retail. Some are permitting all uses, but that's the approximate number of municipalities that have taken action at this point. Probably another 35 to 40 have a moratorium in place, so they're not accepting any applications to establish cannabis businesses in town. So they're going through the same process of gathering information from the public and just deciding what to do. And then there are probably another 20 municipalities at this point that have passed prohibitions. So that's where we are as a state. I know that you're probably going to have particular questions as we go along. So I'm going to step away. I'm going to turn things over to the mayor and to the planning and zoning chairman to call you up and get some comments from you. So I do suggest that, because I think it'll slow us down. If you do have questions, we'll note the questions and we'll come back to them at once. Just so, because there are a number of people here, we want to hear from everybody. So if you want to start with the folks that are in the room, and then we'll go to the folks that are on Zoom. Thanks so much again for being here. I really appreciate it as council because you helped me to do my job better. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. And just as a preamble to understand that if, just as an example, if Berlin were to allow either a retail or cultivation facility, very, very heavy regulated by the state. Obviously, whoever gets a license, that's the state's decision. And we have obviously our say with zoning and where we would allow these particular businesses. But the state, as far as security, how they're run, all very heavily regulated by statute and the regulations. It falls under the Department of Consumer Protection. The state drug control is who regulates these businesses. And again, they're very strict and they would inspect any facility before they allow it to open, be it a retail establishment or a cultivation. So just so you understand that the town has certain priorities, obviously our, building authorities, our police department, planning and zoning has some control of obviously different things, but as far as what is allowed in the building, what has to be in these buildings, the state comes in and they approve it before they would allow either type of facility to open. So anyway, folks, your meeting really, and if you step up to the microphone, if someone questions, comments, opinions, whatever. Yes, sir. Yes.
Good evening, councilors. My name is Justin Fritz. I'm the CEO of the White Oak Bridge, a member of a consortium of businesses, business-to-business cannabis processing licenses, seeking to potentially establish their business in Berlin due to its geographic location in the state. I urge you to consider the potential jobs this changing zoning can allow, as it can bring several new businesses to Berlin, which means additional tax dollars for the city. There are business-to-business only companies, which means no consumer signage. The facility will have a perimeter fence and a 24-hour monitored security. It would be very secure, and you wouldn't know what it was unless you were employed there. We would love to become part of the Berlin community, not only with our business, but us personally. Thank you for your time and consideration. I'll be available to answer any questions should the town councilor and members have any questions about cannabis.
Thank you. What else, folks? The audience, comments, questions? Yeah, concerns.
Sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Donna Rizzolo, and I'm a town council member. And if you could just reiterate the name of the company and give us a little more of the scope of what the company does, I think that would be helpful, especially since you are interested in being in our community. Okay, thank you.
So I'm part of the White Oak Bridge. We are a packaging distribution license or private packagers officially. We would handle all the packaging and distribution of cannabis. So our facility would not have any growing related. It's strictly a middle of the supply chain business to business license. This qualifies under food and beverage license, product manufacturing license, delivery license operates from retail to consumer only. And we would also be operating a transport license. So it really is, it's those middle of the supply chain licenses that are hand punching, but they turn the product raw form into other products for consumer use. We are just as heavily regulated as the other facilities within the supply chain, and we have to operate within the same secure parameters that every other license type does. However, we are business to business only. Non-consumers, there would be no retail sales, no consumer aspect. Like I said, you wouldn't know what it was unless you worked there.
And you said there would be potential employment opportunities. How many people does it take to run such a facility?
Well, early on, we're going to be very small just because the market's early. There's not going to be a whole lot of inventory. So as it grows, there's huge potential. We could have anywhere between 50 and 100 employees in there, depending upon how many businesses locate with us, and then overall the size that we grow to from our processing of the different growers throughout the state.
And regarding
I'm sorry, can you make sure you go to a microphone?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, thank you.
Like a wireless mic?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just so again, people are wanting to know more about this and what the benefits would be from a business perspective. So other than obviously your company gonna have to pay property tax.
Yep.
Are there, as we learned, there's additional monies that would come back to the town? Can you speak to that?
So I will disclose I'm not a tax accountant, so I'm just going off of what I'm told from our accountants. So the middle of the supply chain licenses would operate like any traditional business. You would have property taxes, you would have employment taxes, any other taxes that the town could potentially levy. The sales tax in itself is just on the retail side. So that THC percentage that is based off the sale, that's only on the consumer side of the business. So in order to get those additional tax revenues for the town, you would have to allow a dispensary in some form to receive those additional sales tax revenues. That's my understanding. But
there's no such thing no such benefit.
Oh, there's no such benefit with regard to the type of business that you run.
No, we would operate just like a traditional business and pay traditional taxes as far as I understand. Now, if the city were to decide to do something else, that's up to you guys. Other question?
No, the retail facilities, dispensaries, I think it's a 3%.
Yes,
tax,
municipal tax.
yeah, municipal tax that we could put on their sales. I think it's gross sales, I believe.
It is, and it does also include micro cultivation. And there are set parameters on what that revenue can be used for. So our firm has been obviously involved because we are municipal council in a number of towns. We have been involved in discussions in other communities, and the projected revenue, the yearly revenue is 30,000. We've heard time and time again, and Mr. Fritz probably has heard this. We have seen each other not in person, I didn't realize, but remotely in other towns. That we keep hearing 300,000 over 10 years time, so approximately $30,000 a year in revenue in terms of municipal revenue. And again, yes, it is 3% on gross sales.
And to set the stage a little bit too, what's already here in our state right now, there are 4, they're called producers under the old law, which cultivate, package, distribute. There's 4 that are there from the original medical cannabis bill. And they're existing. They produce now the product for medical and for adult use markets. And there's 20 dispensaries that are existing now. So a few new licenses have been issued over the last few months. And most of them are hybrid. They sell medical as well as adult use around the state. Near us, Newington. There's one on the Berlin Turnpike in Newington, Meriden, South Windsor, Hartford, some downstate, and Milford, a couple in Milford. Stanford has a couple now. So there's about 20 around the state at the moment. And they've granted, I believe, 20 additional grow licenses, cultivation licenses so far. And I think the expected amount of dispensary licenses to be granted are somewhere around 50 maybe. So maybe 30 or so more than are existing now, something like this. I don't think there's a limit necessarily that the state will grant, but we'll probably see how it goes.
There is a limit by the original RACA, but it's off the population.
Let's hope they don't saturate.
I don't think it'll ever get done.
I mean, unfortunately, many states have saturated the market already, and actually our neighbors to the north, Massachusetts, already is saturated, believe it or not, because they allowed many producers and quite a few dispensaries. They actually have a surplus of cannabis. And of course, because it's still illegal federally, it can't go across state lines. So whatever is grown and or consumed in the state here has to stay here. So it can't go anywhere else. So anyway. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it for the additional comments. Anyone else in the audience before we go to our Zoom questions? And then you'll have an opportunity later. Okay, so we'll go to our Zoom folks now. Anyone on Zoom has questions for us, comments?
Can you hear me, Mayor?
Yes.
Okay.
I
feel like I'm at a disadvantage. I apologize for not being there in person, but
I'm sorry, could you hold on 1 second? We need to turn up the volume for the rest of the room.
Yeah, hold on. The room can't hear you down. Hold on a second.
Okay, try again.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Hold on one more minute.
Hang on.
She sounds like she's coming through the speaker.
Yeah.
So.
Can you try speaking again?
No, not at all. Can you hear me?
Hey, there we go. Now we're there.
Okay. First, I apologize for not being there in person. I'm got a good cold, and I'm sure that you don't want me sitting next to you. In any event, this whole situation where I can't see who's talking, nor can I really hear well, is really not acceptable. So I'm not sure what the problem is, but anyone that's on Zoom, I can't imagine that they can hear or follow what's going on. So Maureen, I need to have a visual. I can't hear or understand what people are saying. Is there any way that we can at least get that up?
So I think, Donna, it's Jennifer Capola. I think the issue was that the volume was coming through the camera, and that was the issue. So now you should at least be able to hear us well. Can you hear me well?
I can hear you, but I can't see you. I would like to have seen the gentleman that was talking previously, because I had some questions for him. And I only was able to hear bits and pieces of the conversation because the quality is extremely poor. This is really not okay. I believe his company name was White Oak.
Yes, White Oak Apothecary, and his name is Justin Fritz. Justin, perhaps you could go to the microphone again and just restate what you had stated initially. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so my name is Justin Fritz. I'm part of the White Oak Bridge. Our legal name is White Oak Apothecary. We are a packaging and distribution license. We're co-locating with several other licenses from food and beverage to product manufacturing and transport. We were looking for locations in the area because the geographic center of the state in Berlin fits that bill. We very much are interested in what Continue has to say and what you guys are doing.
So Justin, are you currently doing business here in the state of Connecticut?
No, we are one of the new licenses that was issued under the lottery last fall. So the only existing licenses that are currently operating are the 4 existing medical producers and any of the medical dispensaries that have converted to recreational. And I think they opened 1 or 2 of the new retail licenses. Other than that, the rest of the licenses in the middle of the supply chain and all the new growers are not belonging in it.
So are you a grower, middle supply chain grower, or are you a dispenser? What would you represent?
So we are a packaging license. So we operate in the middle of the supply chain. So the growers, they can do everything themselves vertically with the product that they produce. So the middle of the supply chain licenses, the product manufacturing, the product food and beverage, product packager, transporter, all operate in the middle of the supply chain between the growers and the retail stores.
Okay, so you're strictly doing packaging, correct?
Yeah, our license would be strictly doing packaging and distribution. We would be co-locating with a food and beverage license that would be making food and beverage products. We're also talking to a product manufacturing license, which would be making oils and infused products or pre-rolls. And then we would be packaging and distributing all the product through retail stores in the state.
Are you currently doing business in other states that have the license, if they've legalized marijuana, if you will? So, whether it be, for medicinal purposes or for, pleasure usage?
Yeah, so our entire team is all new to the cannabis industry. We all live here in Connecticut. We have advisors that we brought on from other states, other markets, and individuals that have experience in the cannabis industry to provide a lot of that experience to help us put proper SOPs in place and to help us hit the ground running without a whole lot of learning mistakes.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your answers. The audio is still not good, guys. I can't believe I'm the only person having difficulty with this. So there's an echo. There's a horrible echo. So
okay. Well, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn as well if you guys have any other.
I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on Zoom, anyone? Ask us comments, questions. Audio still bad?
Not good, Mark.
I agree as well. The audio is not good. It is muffled. To me, it's hard to understand.
There is, unfortunately, I've experienced this as well. In a large space, there sometimes is an acoustics issue. It's just the nature of trying to do the hybrid meeting in this type of space. Are people better able to hear me than Mr. Fritz, who just spoke? Are you better able to hear me? You are.
I think you're a little clearer.
Yes.
Than the audience. Yes.
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 Okay, so I think in terms of the folks in the room will use this microphone instead. But are there any other folks on Zoom who do want to speak at this point?
No, thanks.
And so just to add a little bit to what's in our area, just so you get a feel for it. I mentioned some of the dispensaries surrounding Berlin that are operating now. That some of them have been operating for about 8 years when the medical program started. When the medical program started, and there are some other cultivation licenses that have just been granted. I believe New Britain has granted 3 cultivation licenses and 1 dispensary. 3 cultivation, 1 dispensary in New Britain. I believe there's a cultivator that's going to build a facility in Meriden at the end of the Chamberlain Highway, near the mall there. And that's the closest to us. I think there's an existing cultivator in Rocky Hill. There's licenses, I believe, granted to a cultivator in Norwich. And I think one in Bloomfield also has a license. And there's a cultivator, a small cultivator in Portland that has a new license as well. So that's in this part of the state. I'm not sure of everything that's downstate, other than some of the dispensaries, and 2 in Stamford, 2 in Milford. And there's a couple in Manchester now as well. So that's what's existing around the state. What else do we want to talk about? Anything else we can put out there? I mean, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Come on up. I guess this is the mic. So that's it. This is the magic mic right here.
Magic mic.
I think there's a movie about it. Yes, there's. In a different way. I don't think that's it. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I don't think it's working.
Yeah, just like this. All right.
A singer.
Yeah.
There we go.
While you're at it, if you
Got
like.
my audience here, love it. Yeah, so really was an opportunity just to kind of hash out. I just hashed out ideas for why it's a good idea to have this in town. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Cornell Boudria, 115 Skinner Road. It's so near town already. Products in the town from surrounding towns. Really no reason not to have sales in town. Huge opportunity for revenue. I know there's budget season upon us right now. This could potentially fill a gap in some budget somewhere through the town side or the school side. What else? Oh, great way to convert blight. There's a lot of blight on the Turnpike, on Farmington Ave, great way to fill those spaces. Anytime that we're filling blight in with something bright, you're reducing the opportunity for crime. And given the level of security that exists at these facilities, it's an opportunity to help with surveillance. So another reason in favor of having it. What else we got? I have a lot. I can be here all day, by the way. I mean, if nobody else. Yeah, yeah. I figured. Well, I got notes here. Not necessarily eloquent, but it's something. What else we got? Surveillance. Good idea for that. Potentially attract a younger audience into town. I know we have some nice development happening on Farmington Ave right now. We have Hop House coming in, so we're catering to a younger audience already. This plays into that. I mean, it's just generally time to think differently about the substance in this town. I mean, it is legal. The history of it being illegal is no reason to keep it prohibited from being a business driver in town. I think it's a great opportunity. it would be an opportunity lost to not do this. And in terms of cultivation, what better way to play into the history of farming in this town than to allow this product to grow here? So those are just my reasons why. Probably a good idea to have cannabis retail in town.
Okay, anyone, oh, all right.
So something brought all of you out here tonight. We've only heard from a few folks who are in attendance. You shouldn't hesitate to come forward and say what you think. You know, we experience this sometimes, right? Where we don't get input in these settings because people hesitate. It's okay to say what you think. We want you to say what you think. If you have particular concerns, it's all right to ask, you know, express those concerns and ask, are there ways that my concerns can be addressed? I recently just drafted cannabis regulation over the course of a number of months in a town with at the direction of a planning and zoning commission. And ultimately it did end up not passing. It was a 3-2 vote last week. And there, you know, there was a lot of time put into it, a lot of very thoughtful comments made, a lot of work done by the commission members to educate themselves. You know, you heard from Mr. Fritz. Mr. Fritz has been in the process for months of educating, well, really years at this point, of educating himself about the business. And we did have another combined meeting in January. I just want to point that out to you too. There was another combined meeting between the council and the Planning and Zoning Commission, and you can find the video from that meeting. It was January 31st. It was held in Town Council chambers. And we did have some prospective cannabis establishment business owners present. There's somebody who has a warehouse use presently in approval. Dominic DiMartino, who was present. We also had a representative of Slap Ash, Amanda Ostrowitz, who was also present. And that business has 2 retail licenses that they earned through the lottery. So they've got one established in Canton, but you'll be able to see in that meeting recording some of the properties that they're looking at in Berlin if the Planning and Zoning Commission decides to allow the retail use. And again, if you have any questions whatsoever, please come forward, please ask. If you have questions about the process, and I can't overemphasize this is just the forum. You're not going to read in the newspaper next week that something's been passed. There's another level here. And again, it can be through the Planning and Zoning Commission, or it can be through the council. But currently it's Planning and Zoning that does have a moratorium in place through the end of May. And, you know, we're going to be having further discussions with the commission, your planner and myself, your assistant planner as well, who's not here, just to determine what they'd like to do, if anything. They may not decide not to take any action, but if they do direct staff and myself as their counsel to draft a regulation, that's what's known as a text amendment. So it's a proposal to amend the text of your zoning regulations, and it is subject to public hearing. So notice we'll publish in the newspaper twice about the public hearing. You'll have an opportunity to come and speak if there is a particular proposal before them. So do we have somebody who raised their hand? Oh, good. Okay. If you'd like to acknowledge, Mayor, the folks that have raised their hand online.
They may have to unmute themselves.
So Mr. Fernandez, it looks like you are unmuted. If you'd like to go first.
I am. Hi, thank you so much. Raul Fernandez, 71 Whispering Brook, also Board of Finance Commissioner. Hello to everybody. I am a fan of the business. Has there been a study where other places are selling this type of content, this type of material, having any kind of increase in crime in the area? Is there a study? Anything?
I'm sorry, it's really hard to understand you. Maybe can you lean into your mic perhaps and repeat the question?
Sure. Has there been any studies made if any crime has ever been increased in the area that this?
So he's asking whether or not there have been studies done regarding the increase in crime in the areas around cannabis establishments. So we do have some data from other states. If that's something that folks are interested in learning more about, we have established a cannabis page on your town website. I can add some information with regard to that. I did not bring that information with me tonight, but yes, there have been studies that have been done in other states that have had cannabis establishment uses for a number of years now.
Thank you.
And then I believe Ms. Erickson, I think was the one that wanted to speak.
Yes, thank you. Julie Erickson, 85 Hickory Hill Road. I guess my question has to do with a little bit of the process. I just heard someone kind of walk through that a little bit. I want to make sure I understand the process for approval. So it would be the Planning and Zoning Commission that would actually approve either the retail development or grower development for cannabis in Berlin. And it would be up to a licensed retailer or licensed grower to appeal to the Planning and Zoning Commission for approval of a particular location, correct?
Yes, that is correct. It would be by special permit if there was a regulation that was passed. Zoning regulations are permissive in nature, which means that any uses that are not specifically permitted in the regulations are prohibited. And the statute, and I know that the statute is quite lengthy, but there is a section in the statute, and there's a link that's posted online to the regulating adult use cannabis statute, which is 22A-420 et sec. In there, you will see a provision regarding municipal regulation, and it does point to the fact that there would need to be a special permit process, which allows the use that's proposed. Essentially, what the statute contemplates is that a provisional license is issued by the state, and then the business then goes and essentially gets citing, if you will, for the business at the local level. And then once they get approval from the local regulatory authority, then they would go back to the state to get the final license. So that's the process.
Okay, so would the council at any point be involved in any of those mechanisms that you're talking about?
So again, what's contemplated at this point is that if the use is going to be permitted, that it would be permitted through a zoning regulation as opposed to an ordinance. Although the statute does allow passage of an ordinance or a regulation, but it is the Planning and Zoning, at this point, the Planning and Zoning Commission that is dealing with the issue.
And so they are the, I guess, for lack of a better word, final decision maker as to whether or not this is approved.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Gentlemen.
Yeah, we need the speaker. I'm sorry, it has to be.
Hi, my name is Bob Mazzucato. I've been a resident in Berlin for 32 years. I'm just curious how many people are going to be voting on this in this this commission that has the final say on it. Is that an elected appointed positions, or are those elected officials?
Appointed.
The Planning and Zoning Commission is appointed. The process is actually on the Planning and Zoning Commission's page, so you can see where it says how they're appointed. And there are 7 regular members and currently 2 alternates, 7. No.
Can I go a second time? I've got my hand raised.
Yes. Yes, Dom.
Thank you. Do we have any statistics, excuse me, from any of the communities that currently are selling or cultivating, whether it's a retail establishment or not, of the children, the high school kids, an uptick in drug use?
So,
do we have any of those statistics, Counselor?
So I am not aware of any broad information that's been released with regard to that. I do know of some communities that do surveys, periodic surveys of their high school population, and it covers not just any type of substance use. But ask questions about anxiety and depression and all of that. I know many communities that it's becoming more common to have those types of surveys. So ultimately, I think you would have to look at your individual community. I'm not aware of whether or not Berlin has any such surveying at the high school level, but that's typically what you would see, to my knowledge.
Okay, thank you for your answer. I certainly have some concerns with this. I'm a resident. I've got 3 daughters that are nurses. I think we send the wrong message to our children. I know it's legal here in the state of Connecticut. Federally, it's not. I have some big concerns. We have a lot of communities around us that are already selling it. And we all know that literally it's a 5-minute drive to a dispensary. And I really don't see the need to increase accessibility to our youth by having this available in our community. And that's my personal opinion, but I stand by it. Thank you.
Yes.
I've got statistics.
Oh, great. Mike, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks, Donna.
Okay. Now, this is coming from the NIH. According to the NIH, let's see. That is the National Institute of Health, just yes. For folks. Thank you. Cannabis is one of the most used drugs in the United States, and its use is widespread among young people. In 2021, 35.4% of young adults aged 18 to 25, which roughly equals 11.8 million people, reported using marijuana in the past year. According to the Monitoring the Future survey, rates of past year marijuana use among middle and high school students have remained relatively steady since the late 1990s. In 2022, 30.7% of 12th graders reported using marijuana in the past year, and 6.3% reported using marijuana daily. In addition, many young people also use vaping devices to consume cannabis products. In 2022, nearly 20.6% of 12th graders reported that they vape marijuana in the past year, and 2.1% reported that they did so daily.
My name is June Bailey, and I'm one of the planning and zoning members. I just had a question maybe that we could also see if we have any information on, and that is, do we find in the state of Connecticut that we are short for medicinal distributors for people that would need it for health purposes? Or do we find that maybe the development of our additional cannabis providers will be more recreational than medicinal?
So Mrs. Daly asked whether or not if there's any information about whether or not there's a shortage as far as medicinal dispensaries are concerned. So I will say this, when Puma was going through the process of being drafted, and I think even with RARACA, you could actually sign up through the Department of Consumer Protection site to get updates on it. And I've continued to receive some updates, and I know that through the years, again, Puma was passed in 2012. Through the years, they've continued to add to the number of conditions that folks can get a prescription for medicinal marijuana. So, at this point, I think the answer is no to that question. But certainly that's something that they're tracking, right? The mayor spoke to you about the number of medicinal dispensaries that have become hybrid. So, it may be that as through the passage of time, that may be a concern, but my sense is that they're watching that very closely because they did stop issuing dispensary licenses. I called up to the state to try to find out, are they going to recommence for dispensary only, meaning that it would not have recreational or retail, it would just have medicinal, and that would be all. Because that license still does exist under RARACA. They haven't eliminated it as a license, but at that point, they just didn't know. So I think that you're going to see, if they get a sense that that is a problem, then you're going to see that they're going to allow people to get additional dispensary. Yeah, in all likelihood.
So we talk about the medical program going away. Yeah, they're very specific, the state about that, state drug control, that the medical program will stay in place. There needs to be, sufficient products like there has been, but Connecticut has a very strong medical program from day one. So we're a little bit different than a lot of states that once the adult use was passed, a lot of the medical programs subsided quite a bit, but Connecticut so far, and it's very early into the program, but the medical program is still very strong. And there's about 36 or so different conditions approved by the legislature that folks can get a permit from through DCP, Department of Consumer Protection, and then they could purchase the medical products.
So I do encourage folks to, I will say this, Puma was years in the making, and recreational has been talked about for a number of years too. So even though I think, the perception is that it got passed relatively quickly, it hasn't talked about, and they're trying to mimic much of the procedure with RARACA that they have in Puma. So there are a lot of safeguards in there. There are regulations that have been drafted and passed through the Department of Consumer Protection that really speak to the safety issues that people are concerned about. And, certainly at your local level, I would encourage, if those are concerns, there are things that, if you are considering passing a regulation, that you can put in your regulation. I spoke about one of the regulations I've drafted. I had specific provisions that I did recommend as council be included. So, that's something, as you have seasoned, all of you are seasoned planning and zoning commission members, you understand what I'm talking about. And I know that the council does as well. So, things could be addressed at the local level to address those concerns. Does anybody else have any other questions or comments?
My name is Megan Bella, 88 Brandy Lane. Have you done or do you plan to do any surveys and or voting to get a broader idea of how the town feels?
Well, that is a thought that we, some towns, Waterbury comes to mind, have done referendums on it. Then we could consider that, yeah.
It seems like that would be probably a better scope than the 20 of us sitting here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely in contention for that.
Connie Gilmore, I'm from East Berlin. It sounds like there's so many different levels to this cannabis business. I would think that perhaps we should invite different businesses to present the kind of concepts that they have in mind. And then the Planning and Zoning Commission can question, the town can question, and at least we give an opportunity instead of just saying no.
So in that January meeting recording that I mentioned, again, the last combined meeting between the council and the commission, there were potential cannabis establishment business owners that did participate in that. So you can, again, see that online on the town's YouTube channel. That was January 31st. And I will say this to you too, you can certainly call the planner. We've been obviously in contact with those folks as well. If you wanted to reach out to them and ask them any questions, I know that they would be happy to answer any questions that you have. So you can get their contact information. You could go to the Planning and Zoning department. They have obviously a web page on your town website, and you can contact Maureen and she can put you in contact with those folks.
All right. Anyone else in our audience here, or is there people raising their hand? Oh, Seth.
Sal Bordinero, 81 Gianna Lane. I'm also on the Board of Finance. Of the towns that have rejected cannabis, what are the major reasons? I know children is one reason. Are there any other reasons that you're aware of?
So in terms of the one that I did have last week, they were concerned about the youth in town. They felt that it was not suitable. They felt that the potential revenue return was minimal. That's generally what you're hearing from folks. It's important to remember that not all communities are constituted in the same way that Berlin is. There are some towns in the state that they have a very small commercial and industrial grand list, and so they're principally overloaded with residential. So you do have circumstances in those towns. So when you're looking at, what a particular town did, you almost have to look at, do they have the availability of appropriate properties depending on what the potential use is. With retail, it's one thing because typically you're putting that in an underlying commercial zone, right? But as far as cultivation is concerned, I know that a lot of towns who passed cultivation or passed regulations very early on, they allowed cultivation only and they put it in an industrial zone. So these are considerations, which is really why it is something that is most appropriate for your Planning and Zoning Commission to act upon for reasons such as that.
I don't know if there's anyone on the line.
Okay. Ms. Sunshine, would you like to speak? You need to unmute yourself.
Sorry. I'm the mother of somebody who went to Berlin High School in the 70s, late 70s. And all the kids who wanted, the youth who wanted marijuana in those days got it. They continue to do that everywhere in the country. And to me, if it's available legally, it's safer for them, because what they're going to do, they're going to do. And this way, at least you know that it's safely grown, that it's not got chemicals added to it, on top of which it's extremely expensive. And I wonder how many youth people would be going to the retail stores. And if Berlin decides they don't want the retail, I understand that. But certainly the growers and certainly the middlemen don't present that same danger to the youth. And that's just all I wanted to comment on. Thank you.
Anyone else online? Anybody? I can't. Anyone else out here? Just just a note on the dispensaries on our youth. Of course, it's always a problem, and of course, by state law, 21 or over for adult use, you can't go into the dispensaries unless you're 21 and show your driver's license. And it's the same for medical. There's some exceptions for a few diseases that young folks have that they're allowed to get medical cannabis, but very rare. So it is 21, and you just throw that out there. You can't consume on the premises of the dispensary that's licensed. Just so that another issue that can happen, fortunately, with that, but it's not allowed.
So there is a section of the statute. I handed out a lot of them to the folks who are in person. Again, there's a web page online for folks who are participating via Zoom on the town's website. There's a link to the statute, but there's a list of prohibitions in the statute. So I encourage you to look at that. Again, I know the statute's long, there's a lot. The beginning part of it talks much about the different types of uses, but then there is a prohibition section, and that is an interesting read, I think, if again, you know, the particular uses you're concerned with.
Yeah, sure.
There was somebody who had a question about studies done to see if there was crime increases.
Yes.
With
marijuana. So this is from UC Denver. So it's a college website. And it says 10 states and the District of Columbia now allow the sale, possession, and use of marijuana for recreational purposes, and 33 states in the District of Columbia allow for medical marijuana. This study was a study by researchers at the University of Colorado, Denver, appears in Justice Quarterly, which is a publication of the Academy of Criminal Justice Sciences. And to quote, they say, "We found that neighborhoods with one or more medical or recreational dispensaries saw increased crime rates that were between 26 and 1,452% higher than in neighborhoods without any commercial marijuana activity." Notes Lorraine A. Hughes, PhD Associate Professor in the School of Public Affairs at the University of Colorado.
So just a couple of quick comments, and I want to just emphasize that I, as the Commission's counsel, I don't have a vote, okay? So I'm just sharing information in terms of, because I've studied this for quite a number of months now, certainly to prepare for drafting of regulations and such, as has your staff. So like anything else, right, you want to make sure that the source that you're, and this does not go at all to what the last comment was, but you want to make sure the source of your information is a good source. So, you know, it's coming from an institution that has no skin in the game. if you will, right? It's important that you look at that. And it's important too, I made a comment about being able to address concerns. You know, you can't lose sight of that. In the regulation that I drafted, the one that I just spoke to that was voted on last week, there was a provision that there be private security in the parking lot. Okay, you got to think about the types of crimes that might occur. You know, folks are going in with potentially a large amount of cash, right? So theft is a concern. So you want to do things, and there's an officer sitting amongst you tonight, but you want to do things that are the obvious in terms of your regulation. So I just made that point. Thank you.
All right, if there's no other comments or questions, we'll go ahead and wrap this up. And this is not the end of the discussion. You know, we appreciate you all being here, and you folks on Zoom, if you could, I don't know if you could hear on this mic or not, like maybe sign language I could do, but we'll go ahead and we'll go and end this, and we'll have some more discussion. And I think it's worth considering. I've been thinking about that as well, that perhaps a referendum, many towns have done a referendum vote, and certainly that does get to the most amount of people, even if maybe we do it in November. I don't know, you know, just a thought, but we'll talk about it some more and see. I mean, we should get, we really want to get the most input possible, of course, from all our folks. And again, a crowd like this, appreciate everybody being here, but it's certainly not a large number of our town. So anyway, thank you very much. If there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Thank you. Motion to adjourn. Yeah. All right. Second.
Second.
All those, any other questions? All those in favor? Oh,
Aye.
7:15. Aye. Opposed? So moved.
And again, for anybody who didn't take a copy of the statute, there are more that are up here, as well as a list of the links that are the important links to sort of look at to get information that your planner was kind enough to put together.